Hello and welcome to Anatomy of Us. I'm your host, Melanie Studley, and my husband, who is usually here, is not here today because I wanted to share a couple things with you that have been sort of floating around in my brain that I've wanted to get off my chest. I think they're helpful ideas. And so I want to do that in a couple of short episodes just to get them out of my mind and into your mind so that they can help transform your marriage. So let's dive on in. In today's episode, I want to challenge triggers. And here is why. I'll use a really good example. I'm going to use the example of our dog, Zinga. We didn't name her. I would not have named her Zinga, but she is this beautiful little Australian Shepherd, mini Australian Shepherd. And she was probably not neglected like in a terrible way, but like left in an apartment, and barked at cars. And nobody taught her that like things outside of the window are okay. Like nobody soothed that in her when she was a puppy. And so she barks at everything and she freaks out about everything. And it reminds me so much of people who are triggered by stuff. Now, I want to sort of start this episode by saying trigger is a word that everybody uses now. It's really, really, really overused and used massively inappropriately, I believe. And so I want to tell you what I mean when I say the word trigger and what I think about the concept of triggers, because I think that it informs how we should view them and behave around them moving forward. So, some people have legitimate triggers, like for example, I'll use a terrible one from my own life, but I was in a really terrible car accident when I was 9, really terrible. And I used to get really triggered, like my nervous system would flip on and my flight, fight, fear response would just go haywire if there was erratic driving or fast driving or anything, because I had this embodied experience of slamming into the metal dashboard of this like 1970s Nova when I was a kid with all my sisters. We got in a car accident with no car seats or no seat belts. And it was horrendous. One of my sisters broke the windshield with her forehead, and it was terrifying. And so that is what I think of as a trigger. Like you had a lived experience that was really actually traumatizing, like life or death, being thrown against the dashboard of a car. I mean, it's a total miracle that none of us were really, really hurt, because it was a terrible accident. And so when I talk about triggers, that's what I mean. And that's what I think people mean, that when they initially came up with this concept of triggers, I think they meant stuff like that. Like a bad thing happened, a really big bad event. It doesn't need to be like major, like a crazy, crazy war, but it could be something as like scary as abuse or a car accident or severe neglect, those kinds of things. And a trigger is the reminder, like the car going a little too fast, a horn honking, or something that feels or looks and kind of brings up the memory of this intense thing that puts your body into fight or flight or freeze or fawn or whatever. But I think how we're using it now is anything we don't like is triggering. And I think that's such a garbage way of using the word triggering. Like I feel triggered because you're talking about something I disagree with. So why I think that that's garbage and not helpful is because the world is full of things that we will never agree with and aren't meant to agree with. Like the whole world is not supposed to be homogenized. And so when we become trigger happy, that's funny. I hadn't even thought of that. When we begin thinking and saying that everything is a trigger, it weakens us in a bunch of different ways, but primarily it turns us into these little like babies that can't be, I can't have the wrong toy or I'll cry. I can't have the wrong interaction or I'll cry. I'll be upset, I'll whatever. And that is not what I mean when I say trigger. So I want to start by saying that we are meant to be strong, adaptable, flexible people who can handle a lot of things. And the real world has no trigger warnings. So, car accidents happen right in front of you and nobody warns you. Bad stuff happens and people don't warn you. And so to insist upon a trigger warning is really a very victimized way to live. And so when I talk about triggers, I do not mean that kind of stuff. But also I do want to call that out. So if you're doing that, you can change that behavior because it's only going to harm you and everyone else around you and make you quite unpleasant. But this idea that I'm talking about and how it relates to my dog and how it relates to humans is something that, again, I never hear people talk about. And so I wanted to bring it up. So I have a particular client and he struggles with feeling triggered by his partner around a particular thing in their relationship. And I realized when I was speaking with him, I'm like, oh, he really thinks that this other person is causing the problem. And that if that other person would stop doing that thing, that he would stop being triggered. And I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, he doesn't realize that he has a nervous system that is maladaptive. His nervous system is responding inappropriately, just like Zynga's nervous system, my dog, is responding inappropriately to the trigger of things outside of the window, right? And to make it make even more sense, here's a perfect example. So our good friends from Canada were down at our house this week, and my one friend, his name is Steven, he wants to be friends with my dog so bad. And I love it. I love it and I hate it at the same time because Zynga hates him. Zynga hates him and hates everyone and really literally will bite him. And, but he's like, I will make her my friend. Just you wait and see. And I'm like, dude, you're going to just make her mad. At first it really irritated me, but then I'm like, you know what? I love that he tries and he cares and I love him. So I was like, you do you, but if you get bit, don't sue me. Right. But so anyway, it was so interesting to watch because again, his intention is only love for Zynga, but her trigger from her past, her trauma, and I won't even say trauma because I don't think she was traumatized. I think she was just not taught how to be calm. So her own history paints Steven as a bad guy. Steven is only there to love her and give her treats, but her history has painted all men, all dudes that she doesn't know as evil. Now she loves Seth. She's super good with Seth and was never afraid of him. And Steven is one of the nicest people I've ever met. So it was hilarious that she was viewing him like he was going to hurt her, like she should protect herself from him, like she should fight, bite, and harm him, when he was like, I just want to pet you and give you snacks and tell you I love you, right? And it was just the craziest, weirdest thing to see. And I had this aha moment again, going back to my client who was struggling with his partner, because this client actually thought that his partner was the bad guy, just like Zynga thinks that Steven is the bad guy. But here's the kicker. Here's the real kicker. And what was so cool to watch, and what I wish we could, what I wish I could give everybody, all of my clients who deal with this and people who really believe that their triggers, in air quotes here, are somebody else's fault or responsibility. So Zynga got something in her eye when Steven was out here just literally 2 days ago. We were putting her to bed, which sounds funny. We were putting the dogs away at night, and I went into the garage and her eye was swollen shut. And it was super weird. She couldn't look at anything. She was so different. Her demeanor was so different. And she was clearly in a lot of pain. And Steven, being so kind and loving, and his wife, Hatisha, actually, were like, how can we help you? What can we do to help? And I'm sitting there going, well, she's going to get upset if you're near her because she's mad when you're near her. So I don't know if you should try to help, because what if she bites you, or what if she gets more upset or whatever? But this weird, and honestly, a very beautiful interaction happened where, Steven came in and Hatisha, and they were like, let me help you. Let's help. They had colloidal silver that they were going to put into the Zynga's eye, but I needed help. I couldn't have done it on my own. She wouldn't have I couldn't hold her head and open her eye and all of this stuff. And this amazing moment happened where Zynga realized Steven's not here to hurt me. Hatisha's not here to hurt me. They're actually trying to help me, and I am in pain and I need them to help me. And so we had this moment where I'm there soothing her. Steven is literally forcing her eye open. She's sitting there perfectly still. Hatisha's putting the silver into Zynga's eye. And it was so amazing to witness, because Zynga's paradigm had shifted. These people that she had thought were her enemies, she'd now realized they've only ever been trying to love me. Now, of course, I don't think she thought of it in the past tense, but in that moment, she's like, oh, they're helping me. I shouldn't hurt them. I shouldn't chase them. I shouldn't bark at them. I shouldn't bite them. And this shift happened. And from that moment forward, and I'm talking when they would come to our house, Zynga would bark at them nonstop. We'd have to put her away. We'd have to put her on the garage. It was really irritating. She would scare the crap out of their kids, who again, all just wanted to pet her and love her because she's really cute. But from that moment on, everything changed. Zynga's perspective of the trigger completely shifted. And her behavior went from night to day in one moment. And it was so amazing. And I've got to give props to Steven, who he fought for her love, like in the sweetest way. He would say, she will be my bestie. I'm going to make this happen. I even laugh and joke about them getting like matching t-shirts, which I think would be so funny to do. But like he put in the work to help her out. But at the end of the day, it was her choice to see him with different eyes. It was her choice to see him not as an enemy that changed the dynamic of the relationship. Steven didn't do anything to change it. Zynga did. And again, it's crazy because it was like, it took pain. It took actual physical pain for her to get close enough to know she needed him. Right. And again, I'm saying all of this stuff in the context of marriage and in the context of triggers that people have set up that they think this person triggers me or what you say triggers me. And what I want to share with you is that maybe you have a paradigm of being triggered that is actually inaccurate for what the rest of the world is experiencing and doing. Maybe like Zynga, you have a maladaptive mindset. Maybe like Zynga, you're seeing an enemy when really there's a friend standing in front of you. And your job as a person that can think and talk and do all of these things is to examine that, not just believe it, because Zynga just believed Steven's the enemy. He's out to kill me. He's out to get me. And so she would bite him and like chase him and bark at him. Anytime she saw him, she would get so angry. And he never did anything harmful to her. So just to be very clear, he's very, very nice. But again, to use this analogy to offer up the opportunity to ask yourself, is this trigger real? Or am I just like Zynga-ing it? Am I just overlaying this thing that I haven't examined? And if I could examine it, what would be different? And in the case with Zynga and Steven and Hatisha and their kids, what would be different is everything. Everything would be different. So we went from in one moment, before the moment of the eye drops and the pain and needing Steven's help, before that, Zynga, her kids, like Hatisha's kids couldn't pet her. Steven and Hatisha's kids couldn't pet her. They couldn't bring her in the house. She would freak them out all the time. And they really wanted to pet her, but she wouldn't let them. And in a moment, all of a sudden, she was literally like laying on our couch, sitting with them, petting them. They were kissing her. I mean, it was astonishing. And Steven was never the bad guy, ever. He was never the bad guy. It was all inside of Zynga's mind that he somehow should be the bad guy and she should hate him. She should be, try to protect everything from him, whatever. And so really that was such a cool moment. And I wanted to share it in hopes that it will be helpful for you. If you're triggered constantly, especially by your partner, I want you to evaluate and like Zingify this, put Zynga's lenses on here and ask yourself, is it them? Like, is it really them? Or could it possibly be me? Could it be that I have a hair trigger? I'm hypersensitive to something. And if it is, what? What is it? And is that person doing to me what the trigger within me is actually saying they're doing? Or am I wrong? Am I misinterpreting this? Are the wires crossed? Again, Zynga thinking that somehow Steven was a bad guy. He was going to hurt her. There could be nothing farther from the truth. Steven actually owns Zynga's puppy they have her puppy and they're wonderful puppy parents, right? So it's just such a crazy thought and a crazy analogy and an idea. And I truly hope that it blesses you and that it gives you the opportunity to examine triggers from a new lens, because people who use the word you're triggering, your whatever, when you overuse it or you use it without examining it, it has the power to tear apart your life and your marriage and your family. So anyway, God bless you. I hope you have an amazing day and be like Zynga, transform. All right. Love you. Talk to you later. Bye.